and the draft email I wasn't meant to read. I've made a living cleaning up other people's sentences. My firm does crisis communications for companies that forget how to tell the truth without choking on it. My job is to take a mess and turn it into something the public can hold without cutting their hands. You'd think that would make me good at my own life. You'd be wrong. I was in the office late, the city smeared across the windows like someone had wiped it with a tired palm. Our intern, Kira, had gone home after labeling a client as strategically unlucky, which meant their CFO couldn't stop lying to spreadsheets. The cleaning crew hummed somewhere past the glass. I opened my laptop to finish notes for a tech client launching an app that promised to make loneliness frictionless. I would have laughed, but I was too busy being alone. When the notification pinged, I thought it was another calendar nudge. It was. It was a shared inbox alert, the kind we use for drafts when we're workshopping something delicate. The account name was familiar in the wrong way. My fiancée, Emma. We shared a household, not an inbox. She was a book editor, which means she lived with chaos until it agreed to become a chapter. The subject line said, "This is the truth version." I stared at the screen long enough for my tea to cool into judgment. I told myself I respected privacy. I told myself I trusted her. I told myself I would not click. Then I clicked. It was addressed to L, and it had the cadence of a confession written by someone who'd already practiced the apology out loud. I don't know how long we can pretend the story is about timing. The email began. It's about choices. He is good and steady and exquisitely careful. You are not careful, and that's why I want you. After the reading, we go. Please stop asking me to be the brave one. If we're cowards, let's be cowards together. I didn't breathe. I put the laptop down like it was made of teeth. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. The letter wore Emma's voice the way her sweaters wore her. And L wasn't a mystery, not in my orbit. Luca, the novelist whose book she'd been midwifing for a year, the man who had turned heartbreak into sentences that made strangers cry on the subway. He gave readings that felt like confessionals for people who didn't believe in God anymore. I'd met him twice. He hugged like a person who didn't care where his hands landed. I had decided to be generous about it because generosity is the fancy cousin of denial. The reading was tomorrow. I closed the laptop, went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and watched it run down a man who had just discovered his engagement had a trapdoor. At home, Emma was on the couch with a manuscript folded like a sleeping bird on her knees. She looked up with that half-smile she used when she wanted to test whether the room was safe. I kissed her forehead and tasted salt I didn't earn. "How's your crisis?" she asked. "Pending," I said. "Yours." She tapped the pages. "Genius who refuses to cut the paragraph he loves most. My specialty." I wanted to ask if she was writing emails to men with initials. I wanted to ask why she had left the draft where it could find me. I wanted to pretend I hadn't read it. I chose the last option, coward that I am, and sat beside her. We leaned into each other until our ribs formed a compromise. When she went to bed, I stayed up and stared at the shelf that held photos of us at an upstate lake, at a friend's wedding, under a striped awning at a cafe that no longer existed. In every picture I looked like a man who believed in the words the world wrote under him. Fiancé, partner, future. I slept badly and woke with a decision I didn't trust. At noon, I texted Luca's publicist for an extra ticket to the reading. She said they could squeeze me in if I didn't mind standing. I minded everything. I went anyway. The bookstore was the kind with a ladder you never see anyone climb. People in excellent coats murmured as if exchanging secrets were a craft practice. Luca stood by a cardboard cutout of his book cover, greeting readers with a smile that softened at the edges like a photograph left in sun. When he saw me, Surprise flickered. Then something else passed through his face that looked a lot like guilt wearing cologne. "Daniel," he said, smooth as a satin lie, "I wasn't expecting." "Neither was I said. Emma arrived 5 minutes later, the crowd parting for her like all my better instincts. She wore a black dress and a coat the color of confidence. She kissed my cheek as if there were no drafts hanging in the air. I wanted to shake her and ask her to choose a verb that didn't start with betray. The reading began. Luca's voice did that thing it does, stroking syllables until they felt expensive. He read a passage about a love that was wrong in every way except the one that mattered, and the audience made a noise like a collective bruise being touched. Emma stood beside me, still as a photograph. Her hand brushed mine once accidentally, and I pretended it was deliberate because pretending is a muscle I overdeveloped. After the applause, there was wine in plastic cups and the kind of conversations where people say the word process because they're afraid of feelings. I found a corner and watched Emma work the room, that soft power she has that makes men lean toward her to hear themselves better. Luca was across the way, signing books as if that pen could notarize his charisma. A woman slid into my corner like a cat that had decided I was a sunbeam. "You look like someone who had an opinion before the rest of us were born," she said. She wore a silk scarf draped like a statement and carried a camera with a strap that said she was allowed to say no. "I am often guilty of pre-existing," I said. "I'm Sienna," she said. "I take pictures when people forget to pose." "Daniel," I said. "I tidy narratives when they forget to be polite." She followed my gaze to Emma and Luca, now inseparable in the way professionals are when they pretend they aren't public. "So you're the man who writes statements that say what didn't happen," she said. "I try to write ones that say what did happen without starting a fire," I said. "And how's your fire risk tonight?" "Rising," I said, and she smiled like someone who recognized the shape of a cliff. When the room thinned, Emma found me. "Walk," she asked. Outside, the air had teeth. We didn't touch. We didn't talk until we'd left the bookstore light and found ourselves in the dark between two street lamps. She stopped, turned, and took a breath that sounded like a verdict. "I wrote you an email I didn't send," she said. "I read it," I said. She blinked once, a slow shudder. "Of course you did," she said, and the absence of anger hurt more than if she'd yelled. "Is it him?" I asked, because I am still human enough to need confirmation from a mouth. "Yes," she said, "it isn't simple." "It never is," I said, "but the math is what it is. 2 people and a third is too many for a future." She looked at me as if I'd moved a wall she had leaned against. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "No," I said. "I hate that I saw it coming and chose not to move." She stepped closer, and there was that charge my body knows even when my brain is trying to file it. "I love the part of you that knows how to hold a room until the room calms down," she said. "I think I fell in love with that first. Then I fell in love with a voice I wasn't supposed to echo." She swallowed. "I don't want to be a villain in your story." "Then don't be a coward in yours," I said, softer than it reads. "Choose." "I already did," she said, and there it was, sharp and clean. I slept on my friend Max's couch that night because my apartment smelled like us, and I didn't want that to turn into evidence. Max is a trial lawyer who collects vinyl and ex-girlfriends. He poured whiskey and didn't ask for a closing argument. "She's not a bad person," I said. "She just wants a different angle." "We all do," he said. "The trick is not turning angles into knives." In the morning, my inbox held a message from Emma that began with my name spelled out, always a bad omen, and ended with logistics. She would stay at her sister's place for a week. We would divide the books like adults who know that paper can be property and lifeline. She wrote, "I'm sorry for the way this is," which is one of those sentences that means less the more you read it. I went to work. Sienna was waiting in our lobby like a dare dressed in linen. "I shouldn't be here," she said, "which is how you know you are exactly where you want to be." "You take risks often?" I asked. "Often enough to stay awake," she said. "Your face last night looked like a building with the lights out." "I lost power," I said. "I'm on the phone with the city." "Come to the roof," she said. "I need to show you something about the sky." We climbed 6 flights because the elevator in our old building has opinions. On the roof, the wind tried to make a point about gravity. Sienna lifted her camera and looked at me through it. "You don't know how to stand still for yourself," she said. "Only for other people." "I'm a professional surface," I said. She lowered the camera, stepped into my space, and put her hand against my chest. My shirt was thin and her palm was warm, and my heart didn't need directions. "You can be a person up here," she said. "No statements, no polite arson, just this." We didn't do anything the neighbors could complain about. We stood close enough for electricity to hum, for breath to become language. I brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, and she closed her eyes like someone who trusts calm water. When we kissed, it was careful and it was wild, which is a trick I didn't know until then. Her mouth tasted like citrus and confidence. My body remembered warmth without promising a future it couldn't guarantee. We stopped before it became the kind of story that needs a door closed. We let it be a spark held in a gloved hand. I pulled back. "I'm not free yet," I said, as if that could make me noble. "You're not a door," she said, smiling. "You're a person, but thank you for pretending we are saints." I laughed, and the laugh sounded like air returning to a room after a drill. The next week was paperwork and soft edges. Emma came by with boxes and a sweater I'd left at her office once, before we'd handed each other lives as if they were coats. We didn't touch. We did sit on the floor among stacks of books and divide our poets the way some couples divide friends. She took the ones who believed in repair. I took the ones who believed in revision. Before she left with the last box, she said, "He isn't you." It wasn't an apology, it was a diagnosis. "I hope he's the version you wrote," I said. "We all deserve a draft that becomes something better." "Thank you for not setting everything on fire," she said. "I've always preferred smoke signals to arson," I said, and she smiled with the corner of her mouth I'd loved first. After she was gone, I called Luca. He answered with silence for a second too long. "You don't owe me anything," I said, "but you owe her everything." "I know," he said, voice small now that there was no audience. "Be brave," I said. "Cowardice is crowded." He laughed in a way that was almost a sob. "She told me you'd say something like that," he said. I hung up and went to the roof. Sienna wasn't there, but the city was, doing its shimmering noise. I texted her a photo of the skyline and wrote, not a statement, just a view. She replied with a picture of a coffee mug on her windowsill and the word soon. Soon is risky. Soon is a promise you make to yourself before you invite someone else to hold it. I kept my head down and fixed 2 client problems that felt like tiny rehearsals for fixing myself. I ran along the river until my lungs remembered pain as a kind of prayer. I went to a boxing gym and let a trainer yell at me about footwork until my brain couldn't form a single metaphor. A month later, when the city finally believed it might be spring, Sienna and I walked through a market where people pretend radishes can change their lives. We didn't talk about Emma or Luca. We didn't make grand declarations. We bought strawberries we didn't need and shared them with our fingers, and the intimacy was ordinary and bright. Under an awning, she kissed me with the kind of certainty that made onlookers think they were witnessing the first chapter. It was. It was a rewrite, and those are more honest. That night, I opened a blank document and typed, "I am no longer in the business of making lies sound kind. I am in the business of telling the truth without breaking the room." I saved it with a title that made me want to keep going. I closed my laptop and went to the window. The city breathed. Somewhere, Emma was probably arguing with a paragraph until it surrendered. Somewhere, Luca was reading to a room that wanted to be wounded in the right places. Somewhere, the intern was labeling a client strategically unlucky and stealing tea bags. Somewhere, Sienna was hanging a photo she'd taken of me laughing on the roof. The kind of laugh that made my eyes crinkle into something I recognized from before all this. I turned off the lights and stood in the dark with the blinds open, watching the world move. I let myself feel the ache and the relief and the strange gratitude that comes from finding out the truth is survivable. Then I went to bed and slept like a person who had finally put his own sentence in the right order. In the morning, I woke to a message from Sienna. No flourish, no performance, just my name and a location and a verb that felt like a door opening without a sound. "Come,"